call to order the October 26, 2021 regular planning board meeting. Do a roll call vote or roll call attendance. Bill Spalding,
Here.
Theo Null,
Here.
Jim Hogan,
Here.
and Megan Menasali.
Here.
All right. All here. First item. Approval of minutes from October 12th. Anyone have any comments on the meeting minutes as presented?
No.
All right. Hearing none, do I hear a recommendation to approve the minutes?
Sure, I'll make a motion to approve.
And second from anyone?
Second.
Second from Jim, thank you. All right, roll call vote. Bill Spalding,
Yes.
Theo Noel,
Yes.
Jim Hogan,
Yes.
and Megan Menasali.
Yes.
All right. So we have two public hearings tonight. The first one, Stark Ave, is going to begin at 7:15. And we have a second public hearing that's going to start at 8:15. If we are in the process of the first public hearing and it's about to end, I will call to order the second public hearing at 8:15 and then just make an announcement that we're going to continue that so we can finish off our first public hearing. Since we have a few minutes, we're going to jump ahead real quick. I know we're going to move to item number 6, master planning, advisory group review. Erin,
Yeah,
would you like to speak on this?
Yeah, so hi everyone who's joining us. If you're here in regards to the master plan, we appreciate you coming. I thought I'd be real quick and give you an overview of kind of this master plan process and the steps that we're taking to do this. If you tuned in last night, we had an overview from MAPC not completely wrapping up, but giving us a presentation of the Vision 2030 vision statement and mission, as well as the report based on all the public meetings that we had over the last year. So that is going to be open for comments from the general public, and you'll find that on our website, so you can view the document and send any comments you may have over the next couple weeks. So we thought, the next logical step was to kind of take what we learned from there and undertake a master plan process, which the last time we did this was back in 2003. So it's been quite some time. Just give you a quick overview of the master plan if you're not familiar with it and you're just joining us. So it's basically a strategic framework that guides the town's future physical and economic development based on the community's visions and goals. Like I just mentioned, Vision 2030 will serve as the foundation during the in-depth master plan process. It will provide a roadmap of goals, strategies, recommendations for the next 10 years, and it's under the purview of the planning board. Our consultant for this project, again, is MAPC. I just thought it would be a natural fit, and we did receive some technical assistance funds from them to do this project in partnership. And I think they have a pretty good grip on Wakefield now, and heard from a lot of different people, and are looking forward to hearing from a lot of other people. The master plan topics are going to include land use and zoning, housing, transportation and circulation, open space and recreation, historic and cultural resources, public facilities, town services and infrastructure, sustainability and climate, and economic development. So real quick, the process, why we're here tonight, we're going to be creating a 25-member advisory group, really looking for a diverse group, just to bring different perspectives. So I know that's why we're all here tonight. From there, we will have 4 advisory group meetings intertwined with our public meetings, where we will open up to the general public to meet and discuss all those topics I just talked about. And so at the first step in all this is creating this advisory group. So I want to thank everyone that did apply to be part of the advisory group. We had 40 people apply, which is really great. When I told MAPC and actually another community, they gave us kudos because that's a really great number to get for something like this. It was a very diverse group that we received, which is really exciting too. So what I've done is over the last week, since the deadline last 2 Fridays ago, I've taken all the applications. I've created a document with all of them, as well as a spreadsheet, and I've sent them to all the planning board members for them all to take a look and tally or go through and choose a 25 member group. And so I've done that since last week, since I've received that from all the members. And we do have a group of 25 folks. I won't be naming them tonight. We will be following up after this meeting with an email letting you know that you've been chosen. If you have not been chosen, I do just want to say it's just how it how it worked, but we do still want you to be engaged in any part of this this process, whether that be helping us and being spreading the word about the master plan process, upcoming public meetings. So, if you don't get chosen, I'd love to talk to you and kind of work with you and how we can kind of get you engaged in this process, because your voice is very important as well. So with that being said, I will be following up hopefully tomorrow with the letter. And I don't know. Oh, and the one thing I just want to mention, I know I let all the people that apply know, I understand we all have busy lives and it's going to be really hard to make most of the meetings, but all together, when it's all said and done, we're probably asking of you for 10 meetings, which will typically be at night. And so again, we understand you can't make all of them, but we would love your support, especially, if you could attend most, and also at the end, be a huge part in reviewing the document, making any edits, recommendations, also helping us facilitate at the public meetings. So again, I just wanted to reiterate that as much, as we'd love to have you all, I just want you to know kind of what we're expecting, where we need your help in all this. So with that being said, Matt, I'm going to turn it back to you. I don't know if you have anything to add or if any other board members have anything to add.
All right, thank you, Erin. Yeah, just so what Erin did do, she sent out a document to all of us, a spreadsheet. We all went through and chose 25 people off that. Then Erin put that into a master spreadsheet and tallied up basically all of the votes. So you could get between 0 and 5 recommendations from one from each board member. And then we basically just sorted that. And the first, 25 people that either got 5, 4, 3, or 2 were the ones. And I think we came out to, I believe, just about the 25 people, everyone got at minimum 2 or 3 votes. So that's good. So it was, there was no real decisions about we're going to have one person over another. If people got a few votes from each person, then, or got multiple votes, then you're most likely on the board. So, Erin, you're going to send it out, and I know some people, once they get notice that they're going to be on it, may change their mind. So there could be a couple of people that we move up, depending on, as long as everyone accepts. So, any board members have any comments on the process? Bill?
I just want to say thanks again to Erin and putting that out there and pulling it all together. So it was really easy to go through. The application form on the front was really good to read through. I know it was also great just doing a Google search. It's amazing all the different stuff that came up, but it was just really good to learn about some of these candidates and their background. And I found it interesting, the diverse crowd that applied. I'm so excited too, like a high school student applied too. So it really got out there. So thank you, Erin, for getting that message out, and Jen, for doing that. Thanks.
All right, any other board members have anything to say? All right,
Can I just add one more thing that I had in my
Sure.
notes that I forgot?
Yep.
So if you aren't chosen, I just want you to know there's a lot of opportunity outside the master plan that the town is looking for in our committees for volunteers. So please check out our website. There might be something else that you might be interested in. You know, if you have any questions about any of them, feel free to reach out to me and I can kind of point you in the right direction. So just wanted to put that out there, even for folks too that do get chosen for the advisory group. So.
okay, all right, thanks. All right, it's according to my timepiece, it's 7:11. I'm just going to ask the board members. We have a A&R plan. I don't know if anyone has any comments on that. If you think it's going to take a few minutes or you guys want to discuss it, we'll have to put it off till after the public hearings.
Matt, is that for Hickory Hill?
It is, yes.
Right, and I think we received that today, the final.
Yeah,
that right?
yeah, the revised one
Right.
we just
I-
received today.
I had a chance to review it and I have no comments on it. It seems pretty straightforward with the combination of the lot. I didn't find any information that was missing, but if there's something that needs to be discussed, I think we have time right now to do it.
Okay. All right, Attorney McGrail, let's see if we can bring this up. And do you want me to share my screen? to
You
bring it
have,
up?
if you have it, Mr. Chair, you're probably more efficient than I am. And John Ogren is here from, for the record, Attorney Brian McGrail representing the applicant on this, Rose Priest, who is the trustee of this property. And John Ogren is here also on behalf of the applicant. As you had mentioned, Mr. Chair, this is a pretty straightforward A&R plan. As you know, for A&R plans, all that's required is that we have adequate frontage under the zoning. This is taking a very large lot, combined about 35,000 square feet, and dividing it into two lots of one 21,592 and the other one 14,000. Each lot has over 100 feet of frontage. Lot 1 on Greenwood Street and lot 2 on Hickory Hill.
All right, I do have one question. I assume for lot 1, the driveway access is going to be on Hickory Hill?
I don't think we're sure yet how we're going to do that. John, do you have any insight on that for the chair?
We were looking into possibly trying to get the driveway access off of Hickory Hill, just because it's a little less busy road than Greenwood Street.
And you also have the railroad traffic calming measures out there now, so it's already, you know, an issue for at least one of those houses over there, so we would not want to, I don't think you would want to make another issue out there by putting a driveway too close to the railroad, so that was my only question, so.
Yeah, and just, you know, the purpose of this, you know, even though it's not required, I always like telling the board what's happening here. The goal is to keep it is a 3-family use on lot 2 currently. Goal is to keep that use as a 3-family and do a 1-family home on lot 1.
Okay,
And I know that's not relevant for the board for this decision, but that's the plan. So
Yeah.
I know people might be curious, and that's what we're looking to do.
okay. And I know we did receive the original plan about a week ago. I reviewed it and it was missing a few items that I requested the applicant to correct. So I know you guys had on here the house to be removed. But again, our rules and regulations state that you need to show offsets. So that was what was added. And then the formal lot line was missing from that. So those are the two items that I saw that made it non-compliant. So that's why I asked you to do that. And I thank you for doing that. So,
Thank you. We've also submitted the application and check with Erin.
okay. Let's see. All right, so one thing that we basically just started doing is we're going to do a provisional endorsement because we kind of learned that some of the PDFs we had been receiving weren't quite matching exactly with the Mylars. So until we review both of them, we're going to call it a provisional endorsement. I don't see that to be any issues with it, but just in case we get the Mylar and there's something completely different on here than what we see on the screen, we just want to make sure that we cover ourselves. So if anything should pop up, which I doubt, we would let you know immediately.
Okay, appreciate that.
So do I hear a recommendation from anyone for endorsement of this plan?
I recommend we endorse the plan. Let me see. Number 1 Hickory Hill Road, dated 10/25/2021, I believe, as stamped.
I believe it's actually, what's it, October 14th, 2021 is actually.
Okay, so it's that date, not the stamp date.
Correct, yes.
Okay. So I'd like to provisionally endorse number 1 Hickory Hill Road in Wakefield, Mass. Plan dated October 14th, 2021.
All right, do I hear a second?
Second.
Second from Jim Hogan. Roll call vote. Theo Knoll,
Yes.
Megan Menasali,
Yes.
Jim Hogan,
Yes.
Bill Spalding,
Yes.
and myself, yes. All right. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, you authorized to sign the application? I spoke to Erin about that today because I'm going to need to get that application back to file with the town clerk once it's endorsed.
For
And
the
town council has
Form
taken the
A, or-
position, town council has taken the position that can be digitally signed. As accepted by the board.
Sure. Do I hear a motion to, from the board to allow the chair to endorse we're just talking the Form A application, correct?
Just the application, yes,
Yeah.
because I have to file notice with the town clerk on this.
So moved.
All right.
Second.
And second by Jim. Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. Theo Knoll,
Yes.
Megan Menasali,
Yes.
Jim Hogan,
Yes.
Bill Spalding,
Yes.
and myself, yes. And that is to authorize the chair to sign the Form A application on behalf of the board.
Great, thank you very much.
And then we're going to set it up again so we all endorse this plan. I'll work it out with Erin about how we're going to get this one done. All right,
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members
Okay.
of the board, appreciate it.
thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right. We're a little bit late for starting the public hearing, but it's 7:19. I'm going to open up and continue the public hearing for Stark Ave definitive subdivision. Jill, I see that you're here.
Yes, good evening.
Good
Good
evening.
evening. Jill Mann here on behalf of P&G Utilities LLC, the petitioner in connection with the request for subdivision approval to be able to improve an extension of a street, a paper portion of a street known as Stark Avenue. I know before we had some questions, so I just want to repeat one more time that these particular lots consist of 3 independent lots that were owned and controlled by an entity, not the original owner. on a subdivision plan endorsed, I guess, filed and recorded with the registry before subdivision control. So they are lots that are exempt from subdivision control under 81 FF. Notwithstanding, the town has the planning board has the obligation to ensure that all streets are constructed in order to provide safe and adequate access. And the means by which you do that is an application for subdivision control, which is why we have such extensive waivers, because this is on a piece of property and on a paper street that predated your subdivision control. So it didn't comply with any of those regulations at the time, nor does the existing portions of Stark Avenue for the most part. So I just start off with that. Notwithstanding any of that, we had a list of things that we needed to do, not only for the board, but just to satisfy some of the concerns of abutters relative to safety, and comments that we had received from the fire department, the Conservation Commission, as well as the DPW. While we have submitted responses to each of those written comments, we have not received response back because it was not done, with sufficient time for them to, although it was done, I think last week. Peter Blaisdell from Williams and Spragus is on the line and is the site design engineer for this project. But just to sum up what we had done, we went through all of the waivers that we would in fact need. And I think, Mr. Lowry, you were concerned because we didn't specify all the waivers. We just said waive everything, right? So what we had done was go back and identify each of the waivers. And then to the extent that a waiver really required additional commentary, we provided that. For example, with regard to stormwater management, we aren't seeking waivers from those provisions, other than we would prefer to do low impact development in this particular portion of town. But no matter what, we will comply with stormwater standards. And that low impact question is going to actually bring us around to the issue with regard to whether or not we put in a sidewalk on each side of this extension. And if the board so chooses and decides that they do want to enforce that particular subdivision requirement, because the existing street does have those. So for the most part, we need to meet what the standards are of the street that we're connecting to. And they do have a sidewalk on each side, which I know this board knows. So we are seeking a waiver from that in order to put in swales and do low impact development. But if the board decides they do not want to grant that waiver, we just need to know, and then we'll revise the plan. And if the board can even have that discussion tonight, we greatly appreciate it so that we can revise for your next meeting. Relative to the important aspects of adequacy, access, and safety, we did exactly as the board had requested, in certain abutters as well. We called the fire department and we ensured that that cul-de-sac that we're providing is sufficient so that the trucks, the largest truck that the fire department in Wakefield has, can actually go and do a full turn at that cul-de-sac. And we did address the comments relative to relocating that hydrant. And we have agreed with the request by the fire, I think it was the chief, it wasn't the chief, it was a sergeant, I don't remember, but the captain probably, that we will sprinkler the homes that we construct. The concern is that we're end of a long cul-de-sac, and it is one of the longest ones you have in town. If we do that, he just wants to make sure that there's ample fire protection, and we've agreed to sprinkler the home based on that request. One of the other large changes that were made, and that's something that the board also saw and commented on, was look at, you have a conservation areas here, you haven't filed the NOI. We're preparing the NOI, and what we have done though is we've pulled the homes outside of the 25-foot buffer area. It's impossible to do so with the roadway because it cuts through, and it currently has issues with regard to that buffer, but we minimize the impact to the greatest extent possible. And Peter Blaisdell can discuss that with you, but we did hear you, and we did pay attention to that by moving moving the location of the home. We did maintain that 25-foot buffer. At this point, it may be, if it's something the board would like, I can have Mr. Blaisdell share his screen and walk through the plans with you up to the chair.
Yes, we can do that. Now, just so you know, we did get a letter back from the DPW just,
Oh, well, we
Just
didn't
this
know that.
evening.
Okay.
yeah, it was just 3 hours ago that it came
Yeah,
out,
no
so.
worries.
And I'm just going to share it, just so there's not much to it, unfortunately, but you can see what they're looking at.
Most
So
certainly.
basically, well, you can read it. They're still missing quite a bit of information. And one of the big things is they need the drainage report in order to properly evaluate the subdivision. So, so that is one of the big items, is a drainage report. Do you know when that is going to be completed?
Peter, can you answer that for Mr. Lowry?
So what we were hoping to do, Mr. Chairman, is just get a sense from the planning board that aside the calculations, as we talked about last time, are kind of a formality. We're going to do we're actually going to do more calculations for the notice of intent filing than we actually would for the planning board. So our hope was just to get a sense from the planning board if this was the direction that they would like to head in. And then once that's done, then we can do a full set of calculations with the stormwater report, submit it with a notice of intent to the Conservation Commission, and then give that to the engineering department to review. So in a sense, we're not asking to not do the calculations. We're just asking to do the calculations a little later, once we get a sense from the planning board that they do understand that we like this low impact development because it's a better way to go.
So I think, Mr. Lowry, what we're looking for is, do you want structures and the sidewalks? I think, Peter, are the sidewalks what also is going to greatly impact the LID components of this?
It would. You know, if we did have to put a sidewalk, say, on one side or something, we could certainly accommodate that. We haven't shown it on this one, just if we're trying to keep the amount of impervious area to the minimum possible. So it's something that we can certainly listen to the planning board tonight. I'm sure everybody has an opinion on that.
Did you guys receive the in addition to the DPW letter that's on the screen, we did also receive very, very late breaking a letter from the Conservation Commission. Has that been shared with?
The only things we saw were Aaron had emailed us some comments. I think after the initial public hearing, then there were 3 comments, I believe, from Elaine. That was about it. I haven't seen anything since then.
They were the older ones, Mr. Hogan. They were from the initial commentary. I believe it. I'm looking now. It was on.
I believe it was September 14th.
Yeah.
Was when Elaine had developed some, basically 3 comments that she sent over to Aaron.
Yes.
We responded back to those.
Okay. The reason why I ask is one of the things that seems like it's come up a number of times as it relates to the low impact development. In the letter that was sent, and this probably hasn't made it was way back over to your team yet, just based on the timing of when it came out. But it was asking about how, with a low impact development, you know, where this was directly abuts a pair of wetlands, and the current topography seemed to indicate that the water is draining from the south to the north, and that if you add this roadway, it would impact the ability of the current hydrological drainage plane, right? And so I want to kind of understand, it seems like we keep getting asked questions about whether or not low impact is something this board would be amenable to, but can you kind of walk us through what the basis of utilizing, country drainage for this area is, and, specifically as it relates to having, wetlands to the west and to the north, as well as the incline that's part of the topography of the site?
Sure. I mean, low impact development is it's really just an alternative to most of the subdivisions that you would see in Wakefield. Is it better? I don't know. I think in some cases it's better, especially where you have an older road that was laid out. I forget, Joe, when was this laid out? The 1900s, early 1900s, 1920s. Everything back then was just filled. There wasn't really a huge problem if there were wetlands in the way they filled them. Nowadays we can't do that. So Low impact development's a good way to kind of work with the land a little better. You know, when you do catch basins and water quality inlets and forebays and that type of thing, I mean, a catch basin itself, you usually need 3 feet from the rim to the pipe, and then you need another 4-foot sump. So in a sense, when you're using catch basins and drain manholes and these other structures, you tend to have to fill the land more to accommodate those. Otherwise, by the time you get the pipe in the ground, you're at or near the wetland elevation. So by using low impact development, you're essentially using topography to your advantage. You're using sheet flow techniques and vegetation and that type of thing. So you don't have to worry necessarily about having to go in and clean out sediment in oil tanks. You don't have to worry about hoods breaking and oil gas separators breaking and sediments building up in the catch basins or the probably like you've seen the last few days, all these catch basins get clogged with leaves and sediment, and then you have gigantic piles, gigantic puddles everywhere because you have to go out and clean them. So it's just another alternative. I think it's working with the land a little bit better than just doing a traditional subdivision where you have curbing and catch basins, if that seems reasonable to you.
And I guess the other question I would have is that, so, you know, where we have on the south side of the site, and you've got the two buildings that are being, the two new buildings that are being located, is the intent as the water comes down from that elevation and will, you know, in the current condition, just runs farther to the north and hits that wetland. You know, with this low impact development, does that end up, you know, as that water comes in, does it just drain onto that road and then collect, or how is it being managed in that aspect?
Peter, can you share your screen with the plan so that everybody can follow?
Sure. If somebody wants to give me permission, I'll be glad to do that.
I believe you have permission now.
Okay. Okay, everybody have that?
Starting. Yep.
Okay. Okay. So
Then have you just respond to Mr. Hogan, it'd be easier.
okay, Mr. Hogan. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the roof areas, like say we'll start with the 2 lots that are across the street. This one would discharge to its own subsurface chambers here. This one, I've just got this just because it was a little bit of a flatter area. I just put a small infiltration pond here just for the roof. The road, as we had talked about before, discharge off to the sides and then run down into these trenches. I think for the runoff, for just to answer your question with the driveways, I'm not sure yet exactly what I'm going to do. Either do trenches along the sides here, or I can possibly even do a little rain garden down at the bottom, additional trenches along the sides. So the idea is to basically capture you capture the runoff in the trench. It then slows down and filters down into the groundwater that way. If you get a really heavy storm event like we've been having the last few days, it infiltrates at a certain rate. Once the water builds up to a certain amount, it can then reach a perforated PVC pipe and then be distributed laterally through the pipe as well. But the idea is that you've already treated the first groundwater recharge volume. You've treated the first half-inch first flush. Any oils, that type of thing is getting off the street and getting into the and away from the wetlands is being treated before it gets there. On the north side of the street, anything that's maybe makes it in a little bit of an overflow, we added a little overflow pond here. On the south side, we don't quite have as much room. It would just discharge to a riprap apron and then just proceed overland just through the woods until it ultimately would come back and reach the head wall. The north side would have its own roof recharge chambers as well.
And I know one of the major concerns as it relates to the existing roadway, when we start to extend it, it's within the 25-foot barrier for that wetlands. Can you talk about or explain how that water or that impact within that 25-foot barrier is being addressed?
So I'm not 100% sure what Elaine meant. So last time, I think, as you saw, we were trying to maintain a 10-foot buffer, which was basically this red line here. We've pulled everything back another 15 feet and showed it to this line. So as far as the 25 foot, we're maintaining everything until you get to the actual roadway layout itself. And then from there, it's essentially impossible to not be within 25 feet of the wetland resource. I mean, any street in Wakefield that has a wetland crossing underneath doesn't comply with this. So do I think there's any type of adverse impact from that? No, I don't. You have a head wall on this side with a pipe underneath it, discharging to a head wall on the other side, which has been standard practice around here for, you know, a century or more. But and then your other question about the runoff. So the difference too between this and say a traditional catch basin type of scenario with gutters is that with that you're actually you're putting catch basins say every 300 feet, and you're putting them only at low points, and you're collecting them at one point and then you're discharging them at one point. The idea with the low impact development is that you're actually spreading around the recharge across a broader area. So we're recharging across this length. We're trying to keep the roof recharge area here, here, and here. So in a sense, we're trying to spread all of the groundwater recharge all over the site instead of just concentrating into one area. If this were a 5-acre site, like some of the subdivisions you've seen in the past and still in Wakefield, you know, the idea is you set aside more room to put a large stormwater management area, but we just don't have that room here.
So Peter, can you just because I want to make sure everybody understands, so that the areas of concern are those that are within the 25 foot. So you're proposing to put swales on both sides and to be able to carry the water? Is that what you're doing from the roadway so it gets treated? And if you were to do, so the question really should be, it should be a comparison between low impact development and what would be the use of structures. What would be the difference and how impactful would that be? Because you'd have to disturb, I assume, to cut in catch basins.
So this is just to give you an idea. This detail kind of shows you an idea of what the cross section of the roadway would look like. It'll still have a crown. Runoff will pitch onto either side. There's a little bit of a grass strip, which kind of removes some of the first sediment, you know, sand and that type of thing. Then it will hit trenches on either side. So rather than doing, like I said, catch basins at one point, this essentially is spreading everything out laterally.
Okay.
Same with the driveways.
So if you were to have to put it in accordance with current, with just standard storm water, what would be the impact? Like, that's what I'm trying to ask.
Well, it's just another way of doing things. This, like I said, some towns have now updated their subdivision rules and regulations so that they include low impact developments, catch basins and curbing and all these other features are right there next to the Massachusetts DEP stormwater management policy with low impact development. They're all allowed. It's just a different way of doing it. What would be the impact? It's the same amount of total suspended solid removal. It still has groundwater recharge. You're still able to use it for storage. And we still have to do a pre and post rate of comparison. I've already spoken with Bill Renaud, the town engineer. He would like me to analyze everything that's tributary to this culvert, which I already told him I would do. And as you can imagine, there's quite a bit of runoff that heads down to this area. It goes all the way back to the southwest and south of our property. So we would, I know you folks have seen a lot of stormwater reports. We would do this for this if it was kind of a, you know, quick and easy task. It's just to do calculations for this was probably going to take about 3 or 4 days, and then you have to put a report together. I just didn't want to invest the time at this point if it's just going to be a non-starter with the planning board for this. We are planning on doing them. It's just, I wanted to do them just with an idea that this type of plan would be supported by the planning board. But we will comply with the stormwater policy.
All right, well, let me speak to that. So obviously this is a new type of drainage that has not been done in Wakefield before. So the planning board is going to rely heavily on the engineering department in their analysis, whether this is going to be whether this will work here and whether it's appropriate. In order for them to evaluate it, they need to have a drainage report, apparently, because that's what they're asking for.
Mm.
So I don't think we can be directing you one way or the other, whether we want it or not. We're relying on the DPW to give us guidance whether this is going to work and whether they even want to see this from a maintenance issue. And this is a complicated area with wetlands. This might not be the proper place to try this in town. So again, we're going to rely on the DPW and engineering.
So Peter, I mean, I think then what we'll probably do, just so the board understands what our next process will be, we're going to then meet and talk with the engineering department to, go through the process with the LID to see what their position is going to be. And then we'll opt for either this or conventional storm. And that way we'll just go forward with the plan. Okay, understood. I think we understand our directions, right, Pete?
Yeah, I certainly understand everybody's point on this.
Yep. Okay.
I do.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you guys taking the time.
All right. So while there are a couple, you did provide the list of waivers. One of the comments from the DPW, and we're going to send that letter out to you as soon as possible, is that some of them weren't fully addressed. So I guess you need to go through and maybe better address exactly what waiver, how are you going to comply with comply with the standards, but ask for that waiver also.
Right. It also looked like he wanted justification. So if the justification is, not using a 50-foot right of way, because that's not what's there, just explaining the rationale behind it. Right. I think it's not up on the screen now, but I think that's what I saw. So what we'll do is we'll go back through all the waivers and provide those justifications, because that does make sense. He just wants to say, okay, why can't you comply?
Well, we did address the letter back from them, and there were a few waivers that they didn't have any problems with. That's fine. Some of the waivers they asked us to do, we actually did add to the sheet. I went back and I changed it from 10 waivers up to 31. And again, I have a note on here that just says that, this is the first revision of the list of waivers. We'll revise it upon review. As you can see, I tried to break them down as far as I could. If somebody wants to go through and say, geez, you could have added this and this and this, I'm perfectly willing to do it.
I think what we need to do, Peter, is just go through and then provide justifications for why. And we have them, we just didn't write them in. So I think that's going to be just, taking them like you had before, and we can provide a narrative to the board. I mean, I apologize to the engineering department, and that way the board can see that we've vetted them all. I think that's what the request is, based on what I saw briefly in the commentary.
Yeah, we can certainly give as much justification as they'd like.
Yeah.
All right.
Matt, I have a question.
Yep, go ahead, Bill.
Is there, Mr. Blaze, is there a resource that our board can look at or you can send to us regarding the LID? That way we could, I looked and I saw a few different versions of it, but is there something that you're following as a guide that we can reference to?
The only thing we're following really is just the Massachusetts DEP stormwater management policy, which outlines different techniques that you can use. There's nothing really that I could point to as far as, like a design manual that I might have something, Mr. Spalding. I'll see if I can find something. If I do, I'll try to send it along.
I think that would help. And I know I did look a little bit. I couldn't find any case studies either. And if there's something that you have as a case study or a project that has been approved, it would be great to just to be able to understand as a reference, something to compare to.
Sure, I had one. I'll check. I believe I had one approved last year in Georgetown. Same thing, a little bit different. I mean, this is it was 3 lots, I believe, as well. Kind of like more of a common drive. But same techniques, infiltration areas, separate roof recharge areas, infiltration areas for any overflow, that type of thing. But I'll see if I can find something and send it along to you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I know you did do a sketch of the truck turning radius that you put in there.
Sure, hold on. Call it up.
And is it possible to pull up the PDF? It's a little bit easier to read than off CAD.
I believe I sent it to Aaron. Hold on one second.
Yeah, I can pull it up if
Oh, yeah, if you've got it handy. If not, I'll try to find the set.
no, I have it right here. So
Be my guest.
pull that up if you want to.
Oh, sorry.
Sharing, yep. Pull this up. Unfortunately, I assume you guys can see. It's hard when you're screen sharing to know if people can see it. So,
That's
so
good, Matt. That shows
all
it.
right. So right in here is where you show your turning radius. Now, this is not a conventional cul-de-sac where a truck can turn around. You're doing basically a 3 or 4 point turn, correct?
Yeah, 3-point turn.
All right. You do understand that this is the end of a long road where a lot of trucks come down all the time. So every single truck's going to have to do basically a 3-point turn, correct?
Fire truck or regular truck?
Well, there's garbage trucks, there's delivery trucks. Well,
So
will any of them be able to negotiate this with a straight turn?
I didn't run this through for, say, anything smaller than a 47-foot long firefighting apparatus. So did I run it through for a garbage truck? No.
Okay.
But I don't think there's any provision. You can certainly point to me that you have to be able to turn completely around in one. I believe a 3-point turn is allowed.
Well, a cul-de-sac is what's required at the end of a dead-end street nowadays. So
We are doing that. The only way to do a full cul-de-sac here would be to you'd have to probably go into that. We're trying to avoid any disturbance in that 25-foot buffer. So if we were to add a full cul-de-sac and all that additional pavement, then the low impact development just goes right out the window.
well, that it is basically an ongoing issue right now, is that trucks come down and attempt to turn around in this extremely limited turnaround that's there now.
This is bigger than that. This
Maybe
configuration.
what we could do, Mr.
bigger.
Lowry, is we can run a turn and we can show you the largest vehicle that can actually make a single movement around. And then we can work with that. If we have to make it a little larger and create it, we can try and work with that, but we can see what the largest turning vehicle is. We can do that.
Okay.
Hold on a second. I don't have any vehicle information on a garbage truck, an Amazon Prime truck, a Meals
We
on
can just
Wheels.
do it. We can say what the largest truck that can turn there is. That we can provide, right? You can make
Hold
a
on,
truck that's-
Jill, I don't know. I don't know if I have information on a certain size vehicle. I can look into it, but I don't want to make any promises on that. We were asked if we could get a truck in and out of there, fire truck. I've spoken with the Wakefield Fire Department. This is actually bigger than their department vehicle. They can nuke a 3-point turn and get out. They're happy.
Right,
All
but I
right.
think we'll talk about it offline, but we'll try and address that concern.
So obviously, it potentially can turn around with conditions without snow piles down there, but there's also going to be a lot of snow being pushed down there. So we need to take into account what happens in the winter, or basically 5 months of the year around here, potentially, of having snow piled up down there. I can tell you right now, one of my concerns is that gravel portion of the cul-de-sac. If there are trucks turning in there, and there will be trucks turning in there every single day, there are trucks, multiple trucks on every road every day with the economy that we're in right now. So that's going to rip apart that gravel pretty quickly. So I don't think that is going to be acceptable down there. I
Okay.
understand you're trying to have it low impact, but low impact doesn't work when you have trucks driving over constantly. So that's something, at least for me, needs to be looked at.
Okay.
So at this point, we're not going to go through all the waivers, since you're going to be looking at those a little bit more in depth. I'm not going to spend the time and go through that. Does any of the other planning board members have any comments? And I know we basically just got these plans not too long ago, so we're looking at them relatively new too. They were uploaded on the website. That was just happened today. I know, I understand the whole process here. It does take a while, so you guys getting these to us with a short amount of time, I understand that, but you also understand that we need to review them and the town departments need to review them, so it's hard to get comments back. It's hard to
We
have a
absolutely
turnaround, so,
understand.
yeah. All right. All right, any other board members have anything they want to comment at this point?
Theo Knoll. Is there any issue with the far edge of the road hitting that 25-foot buffer? I mean, is that? That's my sort of my only immediate question. Like the easternmost point of the road.
What are you asking, Theo?
I mean, that comes right to the edge of the 25-foot buffer. Is that?
You mean over here?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, there is a wall there that would stop vehicles, I suppose, from going over, but I would imagine that if it isn't sufficient enough, trucks will be turning into that gravel infiltration trench you have there, so that would probably get ripped apart too. So and then again, you're going to have all kinds of snow piled up down here because it's the end of a dead end, and that's the only thing they can do with snow at the end is push it to the end and pack it in there and turn around and come back out. So there's a lot going on right here at the end where we know there's going to be snow.
And we hope that it would eventually get plowed, and the place for having snow plowed is the very end where you can see that there's, an opening. And then that's what we're hoping, that they're going to push it to the end beyond the cul-de-sac, because it would be the perfect place to actually go. But we know it falls off to the side and you get a narrowing of the road. I mean, that happens in all streets, and that's going to continue to happen.
All right, Jim or Megan, do you have anything else before I open it up to the public for comments?
Nothing else from myself. Thank you.
All right, so at this point, I'm going to open it up for comments from the public. I ask that you state your name. I would appreciate it if you had your name in your Zoom identification. Makes it a little bit easier, but also state your address, and you can ask a comment through me if you like to the applicants. You can raise your hand and I will call on you. Right, Mary Ann Power. You can unmute.
Yep, I just unmuted myself. Hi,
Okay.
Mr. Lowry. This is Mary Ann Power, 49 Stark Ave. Just sort of following up on some of your concerns regarding the turnaround. I live about, I don't know, maybe 50 yards from the current turnaround, and trucks already don't go to the turnaround because it's much easier to turn around in my very wide driveway. So I'm going to guess that they're not going to want to go further to turn around on a gravel turnaround, that they're going to continue to use my driveway and my neighbor's driveway. And that issue will probably increase. Just a concern that I have. I mean, it's an issue already. And I see it only getting much worse with this plan.
So if anything, you would like to entice them to go someplace else and turn around, but perhaps not further down the road.
I mean, we could try to encourage it, you know, if we do something different with the gravel, but our new development or new proposal isn't going to exacerbate her issue because the trucks would have to drive by her property. So in order to turn around, they would have to turn around on the parts that are being redone.
No, what they're going to do is what they do already is turn around in my driveway instead of going to the end.
My point is
They're not going to want to drive another. However,
no, my point is it doesn't get exacerbated because if you're going to the 3 new homes, you pass your driveway, so you can't.
Yeah, but all of the people on the homes leading up to mine.
Yeah, that we can't control. Yeah.
But you're going to make it. It's going to be worse because they're not going to want to go further. There are some that turn around in the existing turnaround, but they're not going to bother now to go another however many feet. I mean, it's getting worse and worse, and I don't see this as helping that issue at all.
So, Ms. Power, do you see if they remove the existing turnaround there that you're going to have even more people turning in your driveway, or do you think that they would go down to the end and turn around?
I think if they remove the existing turnaround, that they will most definitely start using my driveway more, because I'm lucky. I have a very nice wide driveway. My neighbors across the street have a very nice wide driveway. So between the two of us, you know, we already take a big chunk of, you know, of these turnarounds now. People that can see the existing turnaround and don't bother to go the extra, you know, 30 yards.
We can leave it there. We offered to remove it because we're going to make a bigger cul-de-sac that's easier to navigate down the end. But if the board would like for it to remain, simply let us know and we'll remove that from the plan and won't undertake that work. I mean, that was something we were offering because it made sense.
Okay. All right. Ms. Power, is there anything else, or? Is that-
No, nothing more.
All right. Thank you very much. All right. Bronwyn, I see you have your hand up.
Hi, yes, Bronwyn Delavolpe. I'm at 8 Cyrus Street. Is there any way to enlarge the plan that's up now a little bit?
Sure. What would you like to focus on?
Well, I can't really see anyone's cursor when they're pointing to things. So really, yeah, that's a little bit better. Great. I just wanted to know where the last existing house is. Can someone shake their cursor in that area so I can see where that is?
It's house number 59 right here.
Okay. And then where's the one that's across the street from that? It should be
The next one up, that would be over here.
okay. And what is to the right of that?
Right here,
Yeah.
it's a vacant parcel.
Okay, that's a vacant parcel. Okay. Now, can someone please show me where this turnaround is?
The existing one?
The existing one and the proposed one, if you would, please.
The existing one is right here. The
Okay.
proposed one would be down here.
Okay, so that little curve there is going to be built, correct? That's
Yeah,
going to be,
This would be
yes.
the gravel portion of
yes.
it.
Okay. Now, can you please show me where Molly Circle is? Is
That
it
would-
shown on this at all?
That would be up here.
Right up
to the
there.
north. Yep.
Okay, all right. I've been up there, and so I know. So that was very helpful. Thank you so much. And the two circles that are at the bend, you see the little elbow of the new road, those two sort of circle areas, is that a drainage catchment area, which they're going to be in front of the two proposed houses? Is that just lawn or?
I'm sorry,
I'm not
where
sure.
were you talking?
Matt, I think it's the Save the Trees area. Save the trees in this area.
Oh, is that what it says? It's hard to read. Okay, yes, to save the trees. Okay, so that's still going to remain wooded?
Yes.
Okay, so is that different because the last time, if I recall correctly, we said something about removing virtually all of the trees?
We were saying that in the waiver, you're supposed to identify what trees you're moving, and we're moving them all in the areas where the homes are and where the roadway is. So that's what we said is, look at, this is where we're clearing, and we figured it was better to do the reverse and say, okay, look at, these are the save the tree areas because all of these trees will be preserved and buffer maintained. So we did that instead of saying, okay, these are where it's coming down. It's pretty clear where they're coming down.
Okay, thank you for that. And just one last question is, I would assume that the drainage accommodates for the removal of so many trees.
Yes.
It does. All right. Okay, thanks very much.
You're very welcome.
All right. So that brings up a good question. So you do have areas where you indicate trees to remain. So again, back in here behind the house on the north,
Yes.
you've got a couple areas in the middle of these lots, and then you say around the perimeter.
Mhm.
How many trees are being saved?
And all those trees there. I mean, if you had to count them, you'd have to do it on average. It'd be, I don't know how many scrub trees, caliper trees. I mean, all those trees in that area,
Well-
hundreds and hundreds of trees.
Well, that's one of the requirements that we have to actually locate the trees and show them. So-
And that's why we're looking for a waiver, because I mean, I guess it's a certain caliper, right? It's a larger caliper because it can't be all trees. It would be,
Correct.
you
It
would
would
have a
be,
plan.
it would be 6 or 8 inches in diameter and above
Yeah.
to show those. So.
Right, and we are seeking a waiver from that because we are basically clearing them, but I mean, if the board will not grant the waiver, then we would locate them. It's just, it's a reasonable request, but if, I don't know what normally is done on subdivisions always. If they identify those, I don't know.
Well, in the past subdivisions, we actually have. And
Okay.
I believe if you go before the Conservation Commission, they're definitely going to want to see which trees are remaining, because some trees are more important than others.
Sure.
So if there's a tree that's on the edge of your 15-foot setback, it's going to be a judgment call whether it comes down or not. Obviously, if it's a specimen tree that would remain to help shade wetland areas, that may be one we want to keep.
Yep,
So
understood.
that's the reason why we request that the trees be shown. So again, I'm not going to address all those right now. We're going to wait until the DPW addresses it, but I can probably say with pretty certainty that I'm going to want to see at least the trees located in the areas that you are going to keep.
Okay.
So, and I do have some concerns with these areas where you say area trees to remain when you have a 10-foot retaining wall in here, how that's going to work. So, you're gonna, this is gonna be down 10 feet, or this is gonna be up 10 feet,
Peter,
this area here.
Up.
So
No, so
you,
it's an easy keep, okay.
so you're gonna drive in your driveway and you're gonna look up 10 feet and see trees on top of a 10-foot wall.
We're trying to just preserve as much vegetation as we can. So that was the alternative to just clearing from lot line to lot line. So yeah, why not?
So obviously, any trees within a certain distance or where this, because you need to build out this wall, you need to over dig it to put it in.
Mhm.
So you could say save trees in this area, but if we don't know how many trees are there, we don't know what saving, and once you start putting this wall in, there may be nothing left anyways, correct?
No, I mean, what's the distance, Peter? Usually it's I mean, the tree span, you look at how big the roots are, I mean, how big the canopy is, and it depends on the tree itself. So what's the distance? I don't even know. And we're gonna have to go back. Mr. Lowry, we'll go back and check it out. And if there's trees on the edge, honestly, if it's on the very, very edge, you're right. It's too big a grade change. Will damage the root ball. And those would come out. So we'll have to identify them for you, and we'll just have to go out and take a picture and see what it is.
Okay,
But I understand what you're asking.
okay. All right, I see, is someone identified as iPhone that has their hand up? Can you, if you have something to say, could you identify yourself?
Good evening, Mr. Lowry. I believe that's me. It's Kristen Kelly Hartz at 46 Stark Ave. I am the other neighbor with the incredibly wide driveway at the top of the street that would be impacted by the removal of the current turnaround point. I do want to point out just a couple quick things. One is, was there any consideration for cars being parked on that new turnabout when an emergency vehicle or any other vehicle for that matter would need to turn around? I'm guessing that there probably wasn't.
We would honestly try to discourage people from parking there, just like you do in the current turnaround, same exact situation, or anywhere else in town. You discourage them from parking there. You can't stop somebody from doing something they want to do for the most part, but you put up a sign, you say no parking.
Okay, so ideally that probably would lead to some challenges with an emergency vehicle or a trash truck or something like that turning around, as it is right now with Stark Ave being not one of the longest dead-end streets. It is the longest dead-end street in Wakefield. The width of the road and, you know, really some of the infrastructure of the road is really not sufficient for the length that the street is currently at. Extending that is only going to, you know, add some difficulty to that and compile what is already a public safety hazard. And it really is. I can count at least 4 times that emergency vehicles could not get up to the top of the street for medical aid since I've lived here, and that's just shy of 20 years now. And I think, you know, not necessarily due to you know, that's not the fault of your current plan or development, but I do think that that street and the planning board, the town, that needs to be considered when you think or consider adding anything that's going to compound that, because that is a real issue and it's compounded in the winter. You know, there are days that the snow removal trucks, sanders, can't get up and down the street and they can't effectively clear it. And I think that just really needs to be considered when talking about anything on Stark Avenue. That's one point that I'd like to make. My other question is, where will preparations and staging and removal of this project be done?
All in front of our properties on the 3 lots.
Okay, and how many trucks and their proposed size would be going up and down an already incredibly taxed street while this project is being done?
As many as an I can't give you that estimate now.
There's,
I have
not
no
there's
idea.
really not an answer to that question.
Okay,
there-
so again, I think we have a flow issue, a traffic issue. Just in making this, clearly you're gonna have to take trees out, you're going to have to bring materials in. And that's gonna cause some issues just during the construction of that, and there is no way for you to get around that. But again, it creates a public safety hazard for the residents on Stark Ave.
During construction, we most certainly will not create a safety hazard. We'll have a proper and safe construction access plan that the board will control, and I'm sure will condition our permit on, which requires us to only have deliveries at a certain time and to make sure we manage our traffic properly. Construction traffic isn't going to create a safety in this side of the road. It's all the way down, and we will ensure that we have conditions that protect. And we will not exacerbate any issues that exist on the far part of the road because we're all the way down. But we will make sure of that, though. It's a good comment, and we're going to put in place a plan that will protect the residents.
And is there any consideration for the weight of those vehicles and the wear and tear on the existing street? And would there be any repairs required to be made after that is done?
So you have a street, a legitimate street, so it can handle a tremendous volume and it can handle tremendous weight because it's a public street built to certain standards. Notwithstanding that, if one of our vehicles damages your road, we are responsible and will be required to fix it. Yes.
Understood. Appreciate that.
Of course.
That's all I had, Mr. Lowry.
All right.
I'm sorry, one final comment, if I may. I understand that this is a paper street. I understand that, that paper street was designed 100 years ago. And I understand that, 50 years ago, we did do plans and their requirements were different and that they're not now. But just because it was a good idea 100 years ago or 50 years ago, doesn't necessarily make it a good or a safe idea now. And that should also be something considered with the length of this already very long dead end street. That's all. Thank you so much.
Right, understood. Thank you very much. So, I logistically, day one, when you go to start construction out here, I assume you're going to need to have an excavator or something up there, correct?
Absolutely correct. Yes.
So are you going to back the 18-wheeler up this road to bring it up there, or are you going to drive it up there and then back it back down?
I have that's going to be something we can talk about at the time. Sometimes we trailer them, sometimes we drive them. But if we did, it would be rubber. It wouldn't be those devastating, I don't know what they're called, tractor wheels. But that's something we'll discuss at construction. We haven't even gotten that far.
Well, it's a real concern, and the only reason why I say is because I live on Green Street, and some work was done up on Dillaway, and the only way they could get the machines up there were to actually drive them up the street, destroying the existing roadway there. So these are some valid comments about if you do damage to the road, are you gonna fix it? So
100% we are responsible.
If I may,
Okay.
Jill, so we're also going to resurface about 70 feet of the existing road from the end of the 1958 taking back. We're also going to have construction tracking pads in to make sure that we cut down the road. And we have to do a full erosion sedimentation and construction sequencing plan. So these are great questions. They're a little down the road a little bit, but
we're obligated to, if we damage, we're obligated to repair.
okay, good to know.
Mr. Chairman, if I can put on one other thing too, there's about 35 to 36 houses on Stark Avenue. And I think we said that the length was about 1,440 feet. We're going to add 3 houses to 410 feet of roadway. So just to put things in perspective, Stark Ave up until this point is very congested, and then we're not gonna be as congested. So I do understand that the neighbors have concerns. I have spoken with people in the town, and they have a problem with people parking on the street. That doesn't have anything to do with our property here. It's certainly a concern, but if they have concerns about it, it's certainly something they should direct towards the police department.
Okay. So one thing, are you still, let me just pop back up here on these plans since they're open still. You're still calling this a temporary turnaround, correct?
We are.
So do you envision this road being extended further?
No, the only reason we did that, Mr. Lowry, is because we're required to, because the plan of the paper street shows a continuation. We do not control any other land, but Peter, is it possible to show the end?
If, Mr. Chairman, if you switch over to the first sheet, which is the index sheet, you get
There
a
we
little bit of
go.
bigger view.
Yeah.
So
you see how this connects to Goldie? Because of all those connections, believe it or not, we don't have the legal entitlement to just cut the road and make that cul-de-sac. We have the right to call it a temporary, and if somebody wants to extend it, they can. And then this board can either say, just like with the other cul-de-sac, remove it or keep it. That's the only reason we call it a temporary, because the road may not end there. It may continue and somebody may develop Goldie, although from what I've heard, it's wet. I'm uncertain of that, but that's my information from Peter Blaisdell.
Okay, sounds good. And then another thing, are you planning on blasting out here at all?
I don't know yet. Either blasting or hammering. I'm not sure. I'm not the builder on
Yep.
this.
The only reason why is because on your boulder wall here, you say
Into ledge somehow?
native rock or blasted ledge with angular surface. So
Right, native rock or blasted ledge. So we'll use.
I think that's just a canned,
It's
I think that's a
it's
canned
just
phrase.
it's just a standard detail.
it's just so you haven't done borings out there or anything. You don't know what is below the ground at this point.
No.
We've just some preliminary test pits just to see what the groundwater is looking like down in areas we wanted to recharge.
And if we encountered ledge, Peter, that's actually a good question by Mr. Lowry. Have we?
Have we encountered ledge? I don't believe we have, but we've been a little bit lower on the site. So there's some boulders there, and I'm sure at some point there might be some ledge, but I don't know at this point.
Okay. I'm gonna just say one thing. We have a public hearing scheduled for 8:15.
Oh, right.
Just to let everyone know, I'm aware of that, and I don't think we're gonna go too much longer. We're gonna try to wrap up tonight's meeting in the next few minutes. So anyone here expecting the 8:15 public hearing, we're gonna start it in a few minutes. So what are your next steps here? Obviously, we need to get you the couple of documents that we just received. One of the big things is, when are you going to file with Concom? Because this kind of needs to run in tandem with that board. So do you know? Go ahead.
Sorry. So we're going to immediately try and schedule something with the engineering department to discuss the LID. Once we know that, then we can go to Concom, because that does affect how we handle what we're doing in the area. And that has to be approved by the Conservation Commission. So Peter, I'm correct, right? First we'll talk to engineering. We'll discuss the LID, determine how we're going to handle the storm, prepare our storm, then file with the NOI. And at the same exact time, we're going to be working on all the waivers to be able to provide rationale for them. And, with you had asked us about the trees, we're going to address that as well. And we're going to try and look at the cul-de-sac too, about the singular movement. So those are my action list items.
Okay. When do you believe you'll be back before the board?
I mean, because we're going to have to turn it, we have to go to engineering and turn. What would be your next meeting, Mr. Lowry? Because I think it would maybe, I don't know how often you meet, and then it may have to go to the next.
Our next meeting would be November 9th.
Yeah, that, we most certainly, no.
Yeah, that's going to be tough. And then,
That's a tough one.
and then the meeting after that is November 23rd, which I haven't even spoken to other members to see if they're going to be available, because that's right at the start of the
What's the
holiday season.
meeting after that?
That would be December 14th.
Okay.
And then that brings you, the next meeting after that would be December 28th.
Right. I think, Peter, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that out of respect for the board, I don't want to, and I know Mr. Lowry is sensitive about this, continue to even the November 20-something meeting, because I don't think we'll be able to get all of the waivers to the engineering department, discuss the LID, work on, I just don't think we can get it all together until the December 14th to be able to have a productive meeting at that point. Do you agree with me?
Yes.
Yeah, so Mr. Lowry, if it would be acceptable to the board, we prefer continuance until the December 14th meeting to provide us with sufficient opportunity to meet with the department heads and then to come back to you with, responses that are fairly complete and a drainage report that you can actually analyze.
Okay. The only issue with that is, as you know, statutorily, we have 135 days to act on this.
We'll give you the extension.
Yeah, unless you grant us extensions.
Most certainly, that, of course.
So we would need, I would like to have the extension at least, within a few weeks.
I'll submit it
Just so
to
we
Aaron
know.
tomorrow.
Okay.
And how long would you like the extension for, Mr. Lowry? I apologize. I usually do it 45 days after the continuance that I've hit. So is that acceptable to you?
We can do 45 days, and if need be, we can extend it out further.
Yeah, just do it okay. So I'll do it for 45 days following that meeting.
So we're going to schedule a public hearing, continue the public hearing until December 14th, 2021, and we're going to call it at 7:15. Just so you know, again, it's just the holiday. We're getting into the season. Same with the 28th. I would have to check with our board members to see if everyone's going to be here. So just so you know, the meeting after that could be next year. So the second time we hear this is most likely going to be in 2022. All right. Okay.
Yeah, we don't expect to hit the second meeting in December. I don't think that that's going to be practical.
Yeah. All right.
I agree with you. I agree. It's tough at that time of year.
Yep. All right. Thank you very much. And we will see you December 14th.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time this evening. Take care.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
All right. I apologize for being a little bit late. It is now 8:23. I'm going to call to order the public meeting for the citizens petition to repeal zoning bylaws section 190-31H. Mr. Liu, I see you're here. This is your case that you're or your petition you're bringing forward. Would you like to explain what you're trying to do here?
Yes, please. Thanks everybody for your time. I'm gonna share my screen. I'm gonna try to keep it brief. Appreciate everybody's time. So you can see my screen here.
Yep.
Okay, great. So this is a petition. This is the bylaw in question. It it says setback from open stream. In no case shall any building or structure be permitted within 50 feet of the embankment of an open stream as defined by the Conservation Commission using the applicable Massachusetts Department of Environmental Quality and Engineering standards. And so this can apply to a variety of items, from house to retaining wall to pool, fence, garage, you name it. So the rationale is that the Conservation Commission is wholly responsible for permitting wetland activities, not just construction, up to 200 feet from streams and other wetland resources. Okay. The commission utilizes data and science-driven regulations and performance standards outlined in the Wetlands Protection Act and Rivers Protection Act. Okay. So these regulatory standards, coupled with more than 30 years of subject matter expertise afforded by the Conservation Commission agents, provides the basis for wetland permitting decisions. Okay, so it works with standards. This bylaw has no performance standards. The zoning-based 50-foot stream back setback does not provide additional protection beyond what is already permitted by the Conservation Commission. Okay, so adds no further quality. Conservation takes into consideration all parameters, conditions on the ground. The bylaw takes into none of that. There are no wetlands experts or whatever working in ZBA or Conservation Commission governs all that. Okay. So repeal will not increase construction. This scenario has already been proven. The bylaw itself, first recorded in 1998, had not been applied until 2019, and there was no explosion of construction around streams in that time period. So we already know what's going to happen if you take it away. Nothing extra. Because everybody has to go through Conservation Commission when they're looking to do anything around wetlands. So right now, homeowners seeking to build approximate to a stream resource only are now required to receive both a zoning variance and a wetland permit. So in addition to the potential for added expense, time delays, an applicant could face possibility of receiving contradictory decisions from the ZBA and Conservation Commission. Having been codified 23 years ago, the application of this variance has happened only 3 times since 2019. Each time we went before the ZBA based the decision on recommendations by Conservation Commission. Before 2019, this bylaw was unknown to Concom and my wetlands consultants. And Mr. Luciani and Attorney Posner will attest to this. So by repealing this bylaw, this will aid homeowners by clarifying and streamlining the wetland permitting process. And through my research, case law has shown a bylaw lacking performance standards, which this bylaw lacks, can be successfully challenged in court. And I'm going to put a link to this case. You can download it in the chat. Please feel free. Anyways, I can't paste anything in the chat. So that's all I had. I'm gonna hand it over to Jim Luciani. He's the current Conservation Commission Chairman, and he can provide some perspective on this repeal proposal.
Is Jim here?
Oh, did he drop? Okay, let me reach out to him while I'll just hand it over to Phil, Mr. Posner, just for a couple comments if you want to speak to it.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members. I would reiterate what my client had to say with respect to the issues presented by repealing a bylaw of this nature. I can tell you that I was a member of the Wakefield Conservation Commission for 9 years, back in the late 1980s and 1990s. And during that period of time, the existence of this bylaw never came to the attention of the Conservation Commission during my service on the commission. I can't speak to what might have happened subsequent to that. I can tell you that one of the concerns that comes up when you have a bylaw of this nature is how it gets interpreted by a zoning board. And after I consulted with my client about this, it's pretty clear that the bylaw is ambiguous on its face. It talks about there being a 50-foot setback from the bank of an open stream. The term open stream is not defined in the Wetlands Protection Act. It's not defined in any municipal bylaw. And in my own client's case, there's a question as to whether or not open stream is applicable or not. His property is adjacent to an intermittent stream. So is that an open stream? I think it's a matter of interpretation. And unfortunately, when you have something like this that's ambiguous, there's an element of, at least potentially, arbitrary and capricious interpretation. One thing I can also add is just the fact that a homeowner has to apply for 2 permits is costly, it's time consuming, and of course, it's potentially running into a problem of having contrary results from the Conservation Commission and from the Zoning Board of Appeals. The last thing I can say is that the way that a zoning board interprets and applies bylaws of this nature is through a variance standard, as opposed to a series of performance standards. So in order to demonstrate that some change to how this would be literally applied, an applicant whose property was within that 50-foot setback would have to demonstrate a hardship, as hardship is defined under the Zoning Act. And that hardship has to be unique to the property. It has to be based on the soil conditions, topography, or et cetera, that are unique to that property. That's a very different approach than the approach taken by the Wetlands Protection Act and regulations, which provide for a performance standard-based approach. And of course, the performance standard-based approach is a scientific approach. It allows the applicant to suggest mitigation. It allows the applicant to demonstrate based on science and based on good construction and resource protection standards that the purpose of the Wetlands Protection Act can be satisfied without damaging the intent of the act and the regulations. So the request here is that the planning board, in its review, come to a conclusion that the bylaw does not serve the public interest and make a recommendation that's consistent with my client's request that the bylaw be, or this section of the bylaw be repealed. I have open to any questions, and hopefully Jim Luciani will be able to rejoin us, because I did see that he was on the Zoom call.
He's back.
I guess he's dropped off.
Oh, he's back now.
Great.
Hey, Jimmy, can you unmute yourself? Yeah, there should be a way to unmute.
Okay, I think I've got it now.
Yep.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm on the commission, and this is really not my commission speaking. This is me speaking. I do believe, excuse me, that it is a duplicated effort to, we concentrate so much on these streams. There are so many variables that we look at that it's hard to imagine that we wouldn't be able to cover everything that would be questionable or would get past us. For that reason, I think that it is a duplicated effort that makes, I think it makes it harder for the individuals that are going after these permits. It's expensive, and not that that's, you should be worrying about that, but you don't want to create too much expense if you don't have to. I agree with pretty much with, I've read his introduction. I do agree with what he's saying. One thing I do want to bring up is the wording on this. This might be a minor detail, but the wording on the bylaw is embankment. And this is where I have some concerns, because an embankment by definition is a wall or a bank of earth or stone built to prevent a river from flooding. So they're really talking about, when they talk about embankments, they're talking about things like channels, like something that you might see in California where they've created these concrete, channels to carry water. But the Wetlands Protection Act is really not talking about things like that. When they talk about a bank, they're talking about natural banks created, through stream flowing, and the water takes its path and channel through the woods, and it creates the banks. And that's the kind of bank that they're talking about. They're talking about a bank that could, be good for wildlife, and for things like that. I mean, we talk about, when we talk about streams and stuff like that, there are actually 8 interests that the Conservation Commission looks at. And although you're not going to be talking about all of them, some of them do apply. And so we're talking about 8 items that we go through to approve one of these projects. Whereas if you're talking about an embankment, they're really just talking about flooding issues. So there's a big difference there. And the words are, I mean, they sound the same, but they're really 2 different meanings. What else do I want to say? I think that's about it, off the top of my head.
Oh, the last thing, Jimmy, were you aware of this bylaw being involved with conservation all these years?
I've been on the board for a long time, and I don't ever remember that topic. I don't ever remember something being brought to conservation to look at. And actually, we wouldn't really have, it doesn't matter to us because we already control that. We control from the edge of the bank to 100 feet out. If this riverfront is 200 feet. So we would just go along, and if we thought it should be 20 feet away, then we'd say 20 feet is fine. If we thought it would be 50, then we would come up with a reason why the applicant would have to prove to us why it's going to be that way. I just is something pop up on the screen?
Yeah, I just opened up the actual section from our E-code so people can
okay.
see what it says.
Right. Okay. I forgot what I was saying now.
You're just talking about how you look at all the different factors in regards to speed and
right. And so it would I guess it's the point is that we've always had protection from 0 feet from the edge of bank to 100 or 200 feet out. We've always maintained that, and we can still maintain that without this additional bylaw. And I do think it does, limit the complexity to getting a permit. So we're all getting a permit for the same thing. So it makes more sense to do it with one permit rather than two.
Thank you.
Yep.
That's all we had, Mr. King.
All right. So one question I have is, do you know when this section of our zoning code was added and why it was added? There usually is a reason why there's amendments to zoning for some reason. So do we know why it was added and when?
Yeah, I did do some due diligence on this. I went to the local library to research as part of my presentation, and I was able to identify a hard copy of the Wakefield zoning bylaws, the 75, and it was not there in the hard copy. I did look through all the annual reports from 75 to 1998. I could find no reference of discussion about it in that 20-something odd year period. But I did see a hard copy of the E-code in the Wakefield Library in 1998, and it did contain this bylaw. So that's what I. Other than that, other than 1998, I did not find any other reference to.
So did you find something before 1988 and this was not in there, or I don't understand.
I did not find any reference discussion in any of the annual reports from 75 to 98.
But was this already in our code as far back as you looked? No? So it was added sometime after 1975 and sometime before 1988?
I would assume so, yeah.
Okay. And so you said this only has been used 3 times as far as you can recall, as far as you can find?
Yes.
So eliminating it potentially would not change too much, or would it?
No, because everybody would still need to go through, the building department, and it was anywhere near wetlands, they would be instructed to go to Conservation Commission and work with them to adhere to all wetlands protection standards.
But conversely, keeping it, it's only been applied 3 times as far as you can tell. So keeping it would almost have the same effect, or not?
It would. Yep, keeping it, you could, yep, it's a duplicative process. Applicants would do what I had to go through. I had to go through, get a variance from zoning, pay lawyer fees, engineering fees, surveyor fees, and then I had the benefit of getting a letter of support from conservation, and pretty much zoning board just deferred to that.
Okay. Anyone else have any questions at this point? No? Okay. At
I
this
think Theo had
point,
a question.
I'm sorry.
I'm trying to, yeah. So can you give a little more detail about the costs that you had to incur? Because it strikes me, I think also to Matt's point, that the stricter rule applies. So that would be helpful to me.
I'm sorry, what do you mean stricter rule?
Well, so like to your point, the in order to comply with both Conservation Commission and zoning, you had to undertake additional costs in terms of lawyer, surveyor, so that's a money cost, but then also a time cost. And I was just wondering, like, how significant that was. And I would think that both to your point, and I think maybe to Matt's point, the stricter rule applies in whenever it occurs. So what was the cost?
Okay, so to go through Concom, I estimate total of, I believe it was around $5 to $550, so $5,550 somewhere around there.
Okay.
And then to ZBA, it would vary depending on each person has their own approach in terms of dealing with the ZBA. Some people, I know one of the applicants had presented by themselves in front of the ZBA, so their cost was minimal, but others would hire an attorney with a retaining fee of potentially $3,000 to $5,000. An engineer could cost anywhere from $2,000 to $3,000, depending on what they need to put together to present to the ZBA for the arguments. So it just depends on each applicant's level of preparedness and what they're willing to put together for the presentation for the zoning board. And then in my case, like I said, at the end of the day, they just deferred to a recommendation letter that Conservation Commission provided with no real investigation, site visits, question of any scientific basis as to whether 30 feet closer to away from the stream is better than 20 feet versus 35 feet. They didn't really know what to ask. They just deferred. I presented them a letter of recommendation from Conservation, and they just wanted to know. And that's pretty much the general operating procedure if you reference any of the recordings for ZBA pertaining to this matter.
But it does strike me that probably in either case, you'd still have to go to Conservation Commission and you'd still have to go to the ZBA.
So you will always have to go through Conservation Commission.
Right.
You can't get around that. And the building department will mandate that.
Right.
If they get a whiff of anything near a wetland zone, they will push you to get a permit from the Concom.
But only because of this section did you have to go to ZBA and incur additional costs, I guess is my question. Or you would have had to go to the ZBA as well, just as standard course.
Nope.
Okay.
No.
So you weren't seeking any other relief from
Well,
zoning?
I added those other reliefs because I was informed that I had to go to the ZBA. And I wanted to, if I was going to go to the ZBA, I might as well have asked for those other items. But I could have, if I didn't have to, then I wouldn't seek.
So did you ask relief from this item, or were you told that you need to apply? So you brought this to their attention, basically, that this existed.
Oh, no. They brought it to my attention. Yeah.
Okay, that's what I meant. So you went to the ZBA with another issue for relief originally, correct, or not?
No. I was trying to get a building permit. I had gone through Conservation, got the permit from Conservation, went back to building department, and then they informed me, oh, I needed to go to the ZBA to get a variance. And that was news to me, to the members of Conservation Commission, to my wetlands consultant, because they were surprised that I needed to go to the ZBA to get a variance for a stream bylaw.
So specifically for this issue is what they said you needed to go for.
Yes.
Okay. And no one else has been told that they needed to do this previously.
Interestingly, there was another building permit request just a little bit before my time, and they happened to be near the Saugus River, and this could have been applied to them, but it wasn't.
I'm sorry, Theo, were you done, or you still have questions?
I think I'm okay. Thank you.
All right, and one of, as we're talking it through here, do you know how many projects that this should have applied to that didn't?
I actually asked for a listing of that, and building department actually could not provide one and asked me to go to conservation to ask if they had that information. So they were not able to provide that.
So potentially there are more projects out there that this should have applied to that it wasn't, is what you're saying?
That is, I don't have proof of that, but that's.
All right. Well, one of the issues is, and I brought this up, is that we're doing this public hearing with absolutely no time for another meeting before town meeting. And this would have been, obviously, this is something I would like to know. If this has been a pattern that this should have applied to many other projects and it wasn't, that would obviously help your case. If it was applied unfairly just to you, that would be nice to know, but not knowing how many other projects this should have applied to, it's hard to weigh that at this point. So that's one of my, what was one of my concerns with bringing this up with only one meeting is, and again, typically we always have multiple meetings for zoning issues because there are issues like this we'd like to go through and get information on. So
yeah, I don't know if we can get a copy of this actual bylaw from the building department. I think they're supposed to keep a copy on hand or something like that. But, I mean, we have it here in E-code, but I think we're supposed to have it available, like at building department, to show, to your point, when it was enacted and kind of the backstory around it. So, I don't know. But I totally understand that. Yeah, I mean,
Mr. Chairman, would you mind if I make a comment?
I'm sorry, who's speaking?
This is Attorney Phil Posner.
Yes, Mr. Posner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I can tell you, based on my own experience being on the Conservation Commission in the town, when I was a commissioner, I personally observed that the town has a pretty variable topography. If you think about it, you have the hills of Greenwood, which go all the way down to brooks and streams. You just reviewed a project which was on Stark Ave. I had a case of the stream running through Stark Ave, and you probably saw that if you took a look at a map of the topography of Stark Avenue. I can tell you that, as I said, in my own experience, I was not aware, and neither the building inspector nor anyone from the Board of Appeals ever made me aware as a conservation commissioner that this bylaw existed and was somehow to be taken into consideration in our work. I think it stands to reason that this, given the topography and the superficial geology, including the water resources of the town, that there were quite a number of projects where this bylaw was overlooked. But I want to make a more important point, and this actually goes back to another deliberation that I heard about the planning board, of the planning board several weeks ago. You were talking about how expensive it was to build housing in the Boston metropolitan region. We were talking about how the state has mandated that zoning be streamlined in some respects, and the cost in general of construction and of permitting of properties in our region. I think this is a perfect example of duplicative regulation in a town. You have a regulatory scheme that's been applied over the course of decades with very experienced people and lots of consultants who regularly know how to respond to it. Then in this case, you have what amounts to a separate regulatory scheme with a relatively arbitrary and capricious approach to regulation. So almost anyone whose property is affected by this is going to be looking for a zoning variance. And as my client has mentioned, there have been 3 applications of this. I would expect that if we were to look at the 3 permits, we would find those zoning variances to be the type of zoning variances that people get when no one seems to really care about the strict application of Chapter 40A and the standards in Chapter 40A. So while I do understand and respect that it would be great to have more information and see how many times that this particular bylaw has been defied, and I think with a good deal of research and expense, you could probably make that determination, and you could probably have a very thorough record of almost every permit built near a stream based on the GIS records and an investigation of the registry of deeds and the permitting that's in the building inspector's office. But if you're catching my drift, what you're suggesting is a very expensive investigation of pre-existing permits, all of which would demonstrate that, in fact, yes, what seems to stand to reason that this is a somewhat arbitrary and duplicative regulatory scheme, or I think this is an opportunity for the planning board to say, yep, what stands to reason and what's horse sense is in fact reasonable and it's horse sense. This is duplicative, it's potentially expensive, and potentially for a homeowner would result in a permit being issued by the Conservation Commission and a permit being denied for the exact same project by the Board of Appeals without any particular benefit for the environment or any particular threat to public health. And that's really what we're talking about, is a denial on one hand and a permit on the other for the exact same project because there are different standards under the Wetlands Protection Act and under the Zoning Act. That doesn't seem very fair for a homeowner. And I don't really think that's helpful in terms of some of the bigger pictures issues that the board has been wrestling with in terms of the costs, the time, and the difficulty of doing, of simply building a house or an addition or people using their land in reasonable ways. So I appreciate your time in listening to this.
Thank you. Again, I'm a big, I guess, advocate that usually laws and bylaws and just laws in general don't just come up for no reason and get enacted. There's a reason that this was enacted, and I'm curious to find out why. I am very troubled that it seemed to have been used on particular individuals, not blanketly applied. That's extremely troubling to me. But again, I would like to know what the original reason for having this was. It has to be something. So that's where I'm a little conflicted right now with, moving forward on this. So that's just my thoughts on this. So, Bill, did you have your hand up?
Yes, Matt, I just wanted to, you mentioned about town meeting and I know back when we heard from Mr. Liu about the specific, the 43 feet or however far it was from the open stream. Just thinking about town meeting on November 6th, this is the last article, Article 9. So to remove 190, section 190-31H, I've always felt that when we have any situations like this, we feel eager to assist, wanting to understand why, but really relying on town council, Tom Mullen, to help guide us through if this is a decision as a planning board that we do recommend or not recommend favorable action. And I know town meeting is November 6th, so there's not a lot of time for this. Do we, I guess my point is, what is our action this evening as a planning board? Are we looking to have some type of an agreement or a vote to recommend favorable action? Are we looking to learn a little bit more about this from Tom Mullen, town council, to understand if this is removed, what other sections of the zoning regulations could be impacted by this? So it's always a concern, I know, is of yours, of mine, and other board members, that if we do start to recommend any type of action towards what's happening in our zoning bylaws, that we're concerned that it will start to trigger other issues. I just wanted to know how you felt about that.
Well, obviously there's three ways we can go about this. We can favorably recommend it, we can not recommend it, or we can request more information. At that point, not make any recommendation, and therefore it wouldn't go forward. The way I see it, if I were to vote to recommend favorable action that this be removed, and someone asked me, why are you doing it? Have you looked at all the parameters? I couldn't answer right now. Truthfully, I couldn't say, I'm voting yes to remove it, but yet I still have a lot of questions. So therefore, I'm left with basically two options. One is to not recommend it, which does allow it to go forward at town meeting, and Mr. Liu would have to explain this all again at town meeting at the end of a long meeting. And one of the issues is, if this fails, you have to wait, I believe, 2 years before you can bring it up again.
Right.
So whereas if we do not make any recommendation and we say we need to hear more about this, it could be brought up potentially in the spring with more information, and potentially with, and I not knowing anything about this, with more information, I think I might be able to favorably recommend that this be repealed. But again, we're down to not enough time for me to make that decision. So that's my feeling on it. Yes, it's always nice to hear from town council and talk to other people in town, get some more input. But again, we're limited to time at this point. So
Understood. I'm feeling the same way, Matt, where as usual, I'm concerned about our zoning bylaws not being as connected and clear as they should be, where there's pieces that, like this one, that's just hanging in there, causing extra work on a homeowner. So I'm just wondering where we're trying to get to this evening. As a board, are we just listening to this? Are we looking at making an action this evening?
Have a second, Chairman?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm okay with continuing it and, definitely doing proper research and so that you guys are 100% comfortable with your decision. And so if we can continue it and so that I have the option to bring it up again for the spring town meeting. And that way we have more time to kind of work with, to give you time to look into the origins of the bylaw. And I'd be very interested to see that also. I mean,
Okay.
I think it makes a lot of sense.
All right. So this is a public hearing. So at this point, I'm going to open it up to the public. If anyone has any comments, I know Bronwyn has had her hand up for a while, so I assume she still has a question she would like to ask. Bronwyn, do you have a question?
Yes, thank you. Bronwyn Delavolpe, 8 Cyrus Street. I appreciate the background on this, something that I wasn't aware of, that it would appear that this bylaw may have been applied inconsistently and possibly unfairly. My question is, what is this bylaw preventing Mr. Liu from doing? And where? What's the reason to repeal the bylaw?
Mr. Chairman, you want me to answer that?
Mr. Liu, yeah, could you
yeah, sure.
address her?
Yep. Yeah, so this this bylaw is just not preventing, I can always go back into the ZBA to seek another variance. I'm doing this because I feel that it's an unfair bylaw. I think it has caused me personal harm and it has affected other homeowners. If you contact the other homeowners that did have to hire an engineer and lawyer and go to the ZBA to get a variance, I'm sure they can share their story of what it costed them. And I think that like I said, I've been through the conservation commission process. I feel that they have they have it all handled.
Okay, but is this current bylaw preventing you from building something?
I am seeking to build a small house on my property.
And where is
right
that
now-
property?
Excuse me?
The address of the property is?
Yeah, it's on Cherry Lane.
I'm sorry, it's where?
Cherry Lane, it's a small private way.
Is that Greenwood, 0 Greenwood?
Oh, he said Cherry Lane.
Okay,
Cherry.
0 Greenwood is also Cherry Lane, I believe. They're sort of one and the same?
Yeah.
Okay. I could be wrong. My understanding of it is that the town has that listed as an unbuildable lot. If that's the same lot, the town has it listed as unbuildable. So I'm kind of wondering how that fits in to the bylaw, and why would this bylaw be preventing you from building on that lot?
It's not. I intend to go back into the ZBA in the spring, regardless of whether, whatever this gets repealed or not, to request another variance. So it's not gonna ultimately stop me, but it's gonna cost me more money. And so it's not just gonna be me, it's gonna be potentially many more homeowners, and it might not be a house, it could be an addition, it could be a fence, it could be a pool.
Yes, I do understand that. Did Mr. Luciani say that there were superseding more restrictive regulations? I think, Mr. Lowry, you mentioned that if there were more restrictive regulations, that they would supersede this one. Is that correct? Did I get that right?
I think that was Theo who made that point, but yes, that is correct.
All right, so that there are stricter regulations that would have to be complied with than this 50-foot, correct?
Right, it's the Wetlands Protection Act. That's the stricter regulation. This
Okay,
50-foot is just an arbitrary number that someone threw in.
okay. I understand that it's a little confusing, but I do agree with Mr. Lowry that I think a little bit more research on this is warranted by everybody because bylaws just don't get written for no reason at all. So I really think that before anyone makes a decision, I think it's very wise, Mr. Lowry, to suggest that better research be done on this. But thank you very much for explaining all that. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you for your questions and comments, Bronwyn. Does anyone else from the public have anything like to add at this point? Okay. So Mr. Liu, well, I guess at this point, let me, well, I don't want to close the public hearing and take a vote if potentially we are all in the same train of thought. I understand
So,
Mr.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Spalding's what he feels. I would like to hear from the other board members how you're leaning, just so we can decide whether we want to take a vote or not. So, Jim.
Mr. Chairman, may I speak for my client for a moment?
After Jim Hogan speaks, you can, yes.
Thank you.
So, Jim?
So where I come down on this is that, to me, from listening to the testimony from Mr. Liu, Mr. Posner, and Mr. Lucchini, we have two people who have served on the Conservation Commission, as well as someone who's gone through this process. And if the ZBA truly is deferring to Concom on all these items, in my mind, this is duplicative, and regardless of if we don't know when it got added, but it seems like it got added between 1975 and 1988. At this point, the reason it got added in my mind is immaterial, and it really what matters more is what the actual impacts are today. The fact that it seems like it's being applied inconsistently and potentially unfairly also, to me, is very troubling and makes it so I'm more inclined, frankly, instead of investigating this matter more. I think based on the facts that's presented and kind of my understanding of it, I lean towards recommending for adoption of removal of this bylaw. I could be convinced that we need more time, but frankly, just on the facts of what's being presented and the fact that we have two different members of either a former or current member of the Concom, that sways me, frankly, in a material way. I think one of the things I do notice is one of the other members that's on the meeting is I believe I see a member of the Board of Zoning Appeals, and I'd be interested in hearing from them if they're willing to raise their hand and speak out. But that's kind of where I'm leaning, just from what other people have said to date.
All right, thanks. Mr. Posner.
What I was going to say, Mr. Chairman, is that if it's clear from your sense that the planning board needs more time to review this, then I think it's appropriate for us to ask that the board continue the matter until a future hearing. And my client will have an opportunity to make a decision as to what to do with respect to his proposed warrant article. I don't think it makes sense to try to jam a square peg into a round hole.
Well, at this point, until I hear what the thoughts are of two more members, potentially you could have enough votes for a yes vote to recommend it. So that's why I want to ask the other members first, query them first, just to see where they're headed. So, Bill, I saw that you had your hand up again.
Just quick, and Matt, I know you've brought this up in the past at other meetings, but my concern is at town meeting on November 6th, when Mr. Lou, you're standing up there, and maybe Mr. Posner and Mr. Luciani will get up as well. But if the sway of townspeople come in and say, nope, I don't want to remove this, you might find this not a big turnout for town meeting, and 200, maybe 150 or 200 people there, and a couple people might get up and speak, and all of a sudden it gets shot down. I'm thinking about that as well.
Yeah, and same with me. I would, the way I'm feeling right now, that I need to have a little more sense of clarity, is that I would probably speak in favor of it, but I could not at this point in 2 weeks get up and speak favorably, because I do not have enough information to be convincing enough. And yes, what Mr. Spalding said, if you get a few people up that are favorable, you can actually, convince people to actually think about it a little bit more. Whereas if they have 5 people that say no, it's very easy for people just to shoot it down without really thinking about it. So that's one of my train of thoughts here, is that you kind of want us supporting you because it does help. So that's how I'm leaning right now. So Megan and Theo, I'd just like to hear, do you think we should, you think we have enough to take a vote now, or have some more discussion? What the applicant's willing to do. Obviously, if you guys are all for it, then that could change things and you could potentially move forward. So
Megan, would you like to go first? Or?
Sure. I'm leaning towards how you're feeling, Matt. I think I could be convinced to be in favor of this, but I don't feel like I have all the information that I need. Particularly, I feel like I need more information to understand why this was put in place to begin with. And I think getting that understanding on why there's this pretty much duplicative ruling would provide me the insights that I would need in order to be vote favorably or unfavorably. But without that information, I am leaning towards continuing the hearing and gathering additional information.
thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'm going to echo this, because I think we all are in favor of wanting to remove duplicative regulations. And my sneaky suspicion is the Wetlands Protection Act was passed after 1988, so that superseded this zoning provision. But it would be really useful to be able to know that and help make the strongest case that this really is a duplicative and redundant rule that does just add financial cost and time cost. And that's, and knowing, I think to Bill's point, the last item at town meeting is a tough spot to be in. So I think there's probably a little discretion in waiting.
All right, thank you. So, Mr. Liu, you have been very convincing. There's some troubling aspects of this that, I don't want to have happen again. Unfortunately, if this was brought before us a few meetings ago, we would have had enough, hopefully enough time to make a recommendation for this town meeting. So I think, again, you kind of want us supporting you going forward. I think it's going to help. So giving it some more time, I think, would be favorable. So.
Agreed.
All right, thank you. So next steps, do you know how much time you would like to have before before we continue this public hearing till?
So, I mean, there's no rush. I know the holidays are coming, and the next town meeting won't be until April, I think. So I definitely encourage you guys to do your research, and I'll work with Attorney Posner on my side. Yeah, I'm very interested to see to learn more about the origin of this bylaw also, and
All right.
and I definitely so I appreciate all your support.
So I think my recommendation would be to continue this meeting and potentially start towards the end of January, beginning of February, somewhere around there. I think you want to wait till after the holiday season because we have potentially limited meetings with holidays and members potentially not being here. So, and things get lost. So bringing this up after the holiday season, hopefully after we have 2 weeks of heavy snow in January, and then it's nice the rest of the year. So that would be the time to do it. So looking at the calendar, right now we're looking at, for January, we're looking at meetings January 10th and 24th. And then into February, we're looking at the 14th and the 28th. So that would be my suggestion, right around there. Obviously, you can do, if you want to do it sooner or later, that's totally up to you. But I do need, at this point, to continue it to a date certain. So we need to pick a date to actually do this.
Got it. Yeah, I mean, in maybe the latter half of January would be fine.
All right, so we will go for January 24th.
Sounds good.
All right, so I'm going to continue up. Susan?
Would
Yes.
that be Tuesday, the 25th?
Yes, I am one day off. Thank you. So, yeah, so it would be either January 11th or the 25th. Thank you very much. I'm getting my days mixed up. So I'm going to continue this public hearing for citizens petition repeal of zoning section, zoning bylaw section 190-31H to January 25th, 2022, and I'm going to call that at 7:15. So, all right.
Well, thank you for your time, everybody. I really, really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Liu. All right. We are done with public hearings for tonight. We moving on to item 7, items not anticipated. So, as you know, it was requested that the board provide a report to the town council. As usual, the notice of that came kind of late, and it's Erin thought it was her, but no, it happens every year for the same reason. So it would be nice if in the future, we do get some notice, so we can have a discussion with the entire board before we go up there, so we can go, the report is actually from the entire board and not from the chairperson, and how much he can dig through the past notes and agendas and put something together. So, but I just wanted to let you know, every year it happens. I'm going to attempt again to try to get them to give us some notice. But I did give that report the other night. One of the things that I did bring up that I haven't brought up with the rest of us yet, Aaron and I have been talking about it, is that there's some tweaking of our rules and regulations that need to be done. Firstly, with the A&R submissions, we have some requirements for paper copies, and we say PDFs, but we don't specifically say it needs to be an exact scan of the plan that's getting presented, because a while ago we did not believe that we'd still be doing remote meetings at this point, so we don't know what the future holds. We could be on remote meetings forever, just because it's the new normal, but we need to have our rules and regulations tweaked a little bit. So in the next few meetings, I think we're going to bring up how we can start working on that. The A&R regs will be relatively simple. It's not a huge process. We need to just put it on the agenda. We need to basically bring up, discuss it, and let people comment on it. And then once we've done that, we can go ahead and vote on them and actually change them. So the subdivision, for a full subdivision, those rules and regs, again, there's some tweaking that needs to be done. Most of you haven't been on long enough to know that whenever a subdivision comes up, there are certain waivers that get asked continually. So a lot of them with pipe sizes and things like that. Some of that stuff we can correct right now, we can correct, so we don't have to keep addressing that each time. Other ones, we may want to add some more items to strengthen it. I know at some point the required plans and the order and the way they were named changed, and I'm not quite sure. I have an old rules and regulation book that I used to go by all the time. Once it got to E code, something got mixed up, and now E code is the way it gets brought to us. So just as long as we go through and look at all those items, I think we should do that. And again, maybe some of the filing, I would prefer everything be electronic as much as possible, but there are some issues with being electronic, is that what's presented for us to ultimately endorse or approve at the end of the day could potentially be different than what we're seeing on the screen and what we vote for. So the one little change I've had is for the provisional endorsements, just to make sure that we check to make sure that what we see on the screen is the same as what we're actually signing at the end of the day. So that's one of my tasks that I think it would be a good winter project for us to dive in and go through all of our rules and regulations. It's a lot of fun. I think everyone will enjoy it. So that's my item. I don't know if anyone else has anything else they want to comment on at this point.
I'll let the others. Would you mind unsharing your screen?
Oh, yes.
The two things I would just like to say is really just very complimentary. The housing forum that Aaron coordinated on the 20th was fantastic, and I just put it in the record that it was great, and it I think really addressed a lot of the issues, and so I hope that's a resource that we can point other people to, and it does position us well going forward. And
I'll second that.
and Matt crushed it for the planning board in that meeting. And Matt, you did a great job reporting to the town council yesterday. That was really, really helpful. And the meeting yesterday was really helpful to hear from zoning board, planning, and conservation commission at the same time. So
I'd like to say that was all well planned, but I had an outline and it completely changed after I listened to David Hatfield speak. So that's things that happen. So just before we ask Mr. Luciani, I see you have your hand up. Is there something you wanted to comment on? Normally we don't take comments from the public, but you're another board and we would not mind hearing from you.
I just wanted to say that I was wondering if this would be a good project for us to work together on, conservation wise and yourself, because I've actually learned quite a bit here tonight. And you might want to ask the applicant or and your board if you think it's something that's beneficial. I will bring it up with our board and see if we can have something work. I'll leave it up to you.
Yeah, actually, it would be nice if we could put something, codify something that at least for each project where the planning board and the Conservation Commission or the Conservation Commission and the ZBA, if they're doing a project concurrently, they at least should have one meeting as a joint meeting. So that would be something that I think, I know you've talked about that. We've always talked about that. Until it's forced upon us, I don't think it's going to happen. So that might be something that we basically try to write into the zoning code, that at least one meeting is a joint meeting.
So is that a yes?
Yeah, I don't know the process for amending any bylaws for Conservation Commission, but we can look into that. And obviously there may be a public hearing portion of that needs to be done, and we can help out with that. So yes, if you want to discuss this with your board, we would definitely be willing to go in and try to basically streamline. So when someone comes before us, if they know they're going to come before different boards, that there's some consistency and coordination there. That would be great.
Okay. I actually see a lot of things you were discussing tonight, same items that we discussed. And so I think this Stock Ave project would be a great place to start. Personally, I think it's we have a lot in common.
Yeah, and I think we're not going to be able to change the zoning code for this, but we can just make it a point that we are definitely going to have a joint hearing at some point, because there are some, I know from other projects we've worked on that you guys are going to be concerned with the trees that are out there. So that's why I keep pushing that you need to locate the trees, because you're going to ask for them.
Yeah.
They might as well do it. We ask for them. They might as well just get it over with and do it, at least in the sensitive resource areas. So it's on each other's plans and we know what's going on, that we can coordinate that if we agree that certain trees should remain for the benefit of wetlands, that they remain, sort of like we did up in Glendale. So definitely, I think we should work together on that.
Okay, well, I'm going to bring it up at the next meeting and
All right.
I'll get back to you.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you.
Jim, Megan, Bill, do you guys have any items you want to talk about?
No, I would just say, I think that the housing forum was successful. I think that, I think one of the things that I'd be interested in doing is, having another one. I think I communicated with Aaron when I went to sign the Mylar the other day. I think it'd be good to have another session of the housing forum that is shorter on content and longer on questions from the public. I think that was something that I thought was really, in my opinion, the most useful part of the presentation, in terms of being able to have comments from the public as it relates to some of their housing questions. And I think that it's something that, going into the master planning process, something that we should probably think about at some point, setting aside some time and maybe as we're going through the rest of the code or the zoning bylaws, if there's items that we think that we want to address from a housing production standpoint, it's one of the most important things I think is going forward in the town. And Matt, you did a great job yesterday, but I think one of the things I heard consistently through the whole conversation was housing and how does development or overdevelopment, as certain members of the town council described it. It's something that we should probably think about critically. The master planning is a great time to do that, but I think it's also, as we're looking at it, what are the tools that we can or cannot use as we're editing our own zoning bylaws, and things to think about. Not necessarily something actionable yet, but I think as we get into more housing conversations, on the town council level, they're going to start looking to us for some input. And I think this master planning process is going to be really important for us.
Yep, I agree. And one takeaway from the meeting we had the other night is that it seems like a lot of the town council members saw that a lot of things were in the hands of other boards, but they also have a lot of power in what they do and what they have done, and they can also make a change. So, and I know one of the most controversial things that have happened in the past few years is the allowing of on-street parking basically all the time, except for during storms. That has really changed the town pretty quickly. And I know that a lot of realtors will say, oh, you can park in the street, it's no problem, which basically helps for a little bit of overdevelopment right there. So, I mean, that's something that perhaps if the town council wants to look at that again, talk about being equitable to everyone in town. If everyone has to think about where they're going to park their cars, then obviously it's going to change development. So, but yes, I agree. Theo, I know you wanted to put on the agenda for our next meeting continued discussions on zoning around the lake. Is that something you're still looking at doing, or?
Yeah, and the vote we had last meeting was to really discuss the discussion questions that we wanted to talk about and get feedback is what is my recollection. So those are the questions that I circulated, and I guess we could even put them into the minutes of this meeting or the agenda for the next meeting, if we wanted to make those visible.
Yeah, I would say we'll put it on for an agenda item at our next meeting, which is, let me can't get my calendar up again for some reason.
November 9th.
November 9th, okay. So we can put that on for November 9th, where we can all review the questions that have been distributed already, and then discuss it at that meeting and see how we want to proceed going forward on that. I know you had thought about having another forum, but obviously we need to have we'll need to have some content and these questions probably fleshed out a little bit more before we schedule that. But that's something we can discuss at that agenda item for the next meeting.
Okay.
So,
yeah,
right.
That seems appropriate. Susan, do you want me to, you've got the text of those questions, or does Susan need to put them into the agenda or no?
No, we all have
got
them. We can, we can openly discuss them at our next meeting, since it's, anyone who is on wants to hear how we're discussing it and what our process is, then they can, tune in and follow along. So I think we'll be fine with that.
Thank you.
All right. So while we're talking about schedule, now that we have, our next meeting is going to be November 9th. The meeting after that is the 23rd. Does anyone have any plans of going anywhere? Are they going to be available for the 23rd? So, yeah, I figured as much. People really aren't traveling as much still. So we can decide at our next meeting, but as of now, we'll have a meeting on the 23rd. That may change, but if we get close to the 23rd and nothing comes, there's nothing that needs to be on the agenda, then I can also, call the meeting off. So if there's nothing pressing on there, we don't have to have it. So at this point, we'll wait until our next meeting to actually make a decision on that. So, all right. And Aaron, yeah, you did a great job for all of this stuff, and you still have a lot of work to do. So at some point you'll get a rest. So, but
I just wanted to note for the Mylar, I will be out of town. I promised myself I was not going to check emails or do anything starting Thursday, but I'll be back on Monday. So I don't know if we want to pass it around, I drop it off, or people wanted to come in and sign again.
I will, I'll stop in and I don't know if Attorney Braille is going to forward an electronic copy for me to sign the Form A, or if he's going to leave one at your office. I can sign that, pick up the Mylar. Yeah, so.
I have the copy, the Form A here, so you could probably just sign that, and then I can scan it back to him once I get it or whatever.
All right.
Or he can pick it up, whatever.
So
So yeah.
I will try to coordinate with you and get over there tomorrow to get that done. I'll get the Mylar and we'll get it all endorsed by everyone, and then I can even get it to Attorney McGrail, so you don't have to worry about it. You can enjoy your vacation and unplug.
I didn't mean it like that, but I kind of did.
Yes, no, I understand. You need, go on vacation and be on vacation. So
yeah. And there was something, so just, I know we have a lot of meetings coming up, and this is all I was going to add. I don't really have any updates because, as you've seen, a lot of stuff we've been talking about is coming to fruition or has. But I will start sending, I'm going to be talking to MAPC possibly tomorrow or first thing when I get in on Monday. I will be sending a a doodle poll around for the advisory group members for us to meet sometime in November. I know we'll have to figure out how we want to do this as a planning board for representation, who wants to be there for both that and public meetings. But I just wanted to throw that out there that will be coming through the pipeline soon.
okay.
Aaron, can you explain what that process looks like? We have the advisory committee. I'm assuming the MAPC is going to have, I think you said there's like 10 meetings. And then after that, it leads into the master planning. But what does that actual process look like?
So if you just bear with me 1 second, I've sent this to the folks that were interested, a reminder today. I wish I had knew on the top of my head, but just one second.
Well, a representative from the MAPC will be facilitating, correct?
Yeah, so I was just going to run through the calendar real quick, what that looks like. But you know what? I can't. Oh, here we go. So yeah, MAPC is going to be the one facilitating basically this whole thing. I'll be working with him really closely. But kind of how it breaks down is in November, we'll send the doodle poll around to the advisory group, give a summary of background information, talking about just preliminary information, working maps. December, we'll have our first actual, in December will be our first advisory group working session. In January, we'll have our first public meeting for the master plan process. February, another advisory group meeting. March, April, the second public meeting. April, May, the third advisory group. And then May, we have our town meeting. So we'll be doing some tabletop stuff there to just describe what's going on. May, June, there'll be the third public forum. So the public forums are all open to the general public. The more, we'd love to have as many people there as possible. June, July, the fourth working advisory group, and then September is the final and public forum. And at all these different public forums, there'll be 2 topics that are going to be discussed at each of them. And there'll be breakout sessions, some background information. And then October, November, they'll take all the data MAPC, work with me and the advisory group to kind of run through that, get the report going. And then we'll have a final advisory group meeting in December of next year. And then hopefully by January 2023, wow, that sounds like a long time from now. The final report will be presented to town council. So it's a lot. So.
And what's the deliverable? So as they're going through this master planning process, is it so like, is the intent for them to help guide the town in terms of setting like the strategic vision, which then theoretically, Q1 of 2023, members of this board or whoever was on the board in 2023 would start incorporating that kind of high level feedback into whatever our actual underlying zoning is?
So not just zoning, just want to make that clear, that it's the starting point, I think, if we want to look at our zoning from a planning board's perspective internally here, any takeaways that we get from the report. But I think, it's all 12 or however many topics there are, 10 to 12 topics that are going to be discussed. It's supposed to be our guide as we move forward in the next 10 years to kind of be what we look to as we're making decisions, looking at any bylaw changes, when it comes to housing, our downtown business corridors, things like that, on top of zoning and land use as well. So it's going to be a pretty hefty report, but it's going to be broken up into chapters where there'll be takeaways, goals, strategies, and I'm more than happy to send you more information about this, the contract that we have with them. If you'd like to see that, gives you a better breakdown. So
I know I personally would, and that would be very much appreciated. Thank you.
you're welcome.
And I just want to remind you, as this process is going along, if during this we see some trends that would help us with zoning issues, we don't need to wait until this report comes out. We can proactively, implement some of these things. So if we see something coming out, we may want to get in on that, basically.
I think after understanding that timeline, I would wholeheartedly agree.
Definitely, yeah, we don't want to wait that long. So one of the things that I heard a lot about with the housing forum is that we may want to lower, do the change in zoning to with the affordable units to bring it down from 80% of AMI to something a little more attainable as affordable for people. So that's something we can start working on for spring town meeting if we want, is to try to revise that. So any new units that come on, that the people that qualify for it, it's a little more helpful than 80%, because even 80% of average median income in Wakefield is, I could not afford to live in this town at this point. So luckily I purchased over 20 years ago, but even at 80%, probably at 60%, I couldn't afford it. So that's something we should look at and dive deep into that and try to get something meaningful, hopefully for spring. So that's something completely obtainable. So
I also recommend too, it's a 100-page report just for our vision. So if you have the time, read through it over the next 2 weeks. And if you have any comments, please, it should be on our website soon if it's not already. Please look at that, because that's kind of a great starting point. And kind of alluding to what Matt was saying with housing, I think it's not just thinking about these developments we're seeing, but how do we look at housing differently in our community, even with like accessory dwelling units and things like that. So just something to keep in the back of your mind as well. That's all I have tonight.
all right. No one else has anything? Do I hear item 6, do I hear a motion for adjournment?
I will
Really?
make a
No one?
motion.
Okay, thank you, Theo. I was getting worried there, so,
We're all falling asleep.
Second,
and seconded by Jim. Okay, roll call vote. Bill Spalding,
Yes.
Megan Menasali,
Yes.
Jim Hogan,
yes.
Theo Knoll,
Yes.
and Matthew Lowry, yes. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Aaron. It is 9:50.